Hello everyone, welcome back to Algebra 1-2, where we look at topics in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and additional mathematics. Today's lesson, factorize a trinomial. And so in this lesson, you will learn the skills that are necessary to factorize a trinomial. In particular, we'll be looking at the AC method. We'll explain that a little bit later on. Now, a trinomial is a quadratic expression written in standard form. It doesn't have to be written in standard form, but generally, when we say ax squared plus bx plus c, this is what we mean by a trinomial, and these are the types of expressions that we're going to be focused on today. So before we start factorizing our trinomial, first, we want to take a look at this expression, which is kind of the opposite. And here it says expand and simplify. So we want to expand and simplify this expression. And we are going to do that using the distributive law. Now, the distributive law says that if we have a bracket times a number, we can use that number to distribute it across the bracket, meaning that we can use this number to multiply the other bracket there. And so what we're going to be doing then is to take 3x first and multiply this bracket x plus 5. And then we take this plus 2 and multiply it across this bracket, x plus 5. And so multiplying here, 3x times x gives us 3x squared. And then 3x times 5 gives us 15x. After that, we have 2 times x, which gives us a 2x, and 2 times 5, which gives us a 10. And because these two terms are similar, they're what we call like terms, we can add them together, and so our final expression, our answer, is going to be 3x squared plus 15 plus 2, that's 17x plus 10. And that is our answer. Now, the question is, how can we reverse this whole operation here? How can we write it backwards? How can we work it so that this expression becomes the question? So we say factorize, because this here is our trinomial. Factorize 3x squared plus 17x plus 10. And so if we want to factorize this, then we can look at what we did here and work backwards. So the first thing is that here we have three terms, 3x squared plus 17x plus 10. And in the step before, we had four terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now remember, these two terms combined to give 17. 15x and 2x. We got 17x there. So it seems that our next step should be to expand 17x and write it as 15x plus 2x. More on this later. Plus 10. Now the question is, there could be 14 and 3, there could be 12 and 5, so why choose 15 and 2? And that is where we're going to get into discussing the AC method in a moment. So we would split that 17 back into 15 and 2. And once we have done that, we can now factorize by grouping, where we can group the first two in a bracket and the second two in a bracket. And then we can say what is the highest common factor of this bracket. Sometimes people call it the GCD. And we can write down for this bracket that it is 3x, because we can divide both by 3x. And notice it's the same thing here. 3 can divide 3 and 15, and x is the highest common factor for the letters. And 3x squared divided by x gives us x, and 15x divided by 3 gives us 5. And notice it's exactly as we have it here. So we are reversing it. And now look at these two. What can divide these two then is 2, these two items here. So we divide them by 2, and we get x plus 5. And then to finish it up, we simply take these two and put them in a bracket by themselves, which gives us 3x plus 2, and write back one of our other brackets, and we would have reversed it. Now, let's discuss what we mean by the AC method. The AC method and how it works, we have a couple of things to do. First, we need to multiply the coefficients of the squared term by the constant c. So this is the coefficient of the squared term. It is a, it will be a number, and our constant c will also be a number. So we multiply a and c, and a times c gives us ac, so we get our product there. And once we get our product, we go to step 2, where we write down the factor pairs of AC. Now, when you have a number, you can break that number into products, into product pairs rather. So you have AC, and we can see, we can look at the different factor pairs of this AC. Sometimes there'll be one, sometimes there'll be many. And then we choose from those factor pairs the pair that sums to give B. It will make more sense in a moment when we start going through it. And finally, we rewrite B as a sum of the selected factor pairs, and then we factorize by grouping. So see if it seems a little bit confusing, it will get a little bit easier as we go along. Now let's look at an actual example and see how we do it. Now this is our A here. I should make this a little bigger. So let me make it a little bigger. Here we go. So here we have ax squared plus bx plus c. Let me just write it above it. Ax squared plus bx plus c. So you see that your a is 2 and your c is also 2. So the first thing we want to do is multiply 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 gives us 4. Great. Now that we have our 4, we want to write down other factor pairs of 4. That is what multiplies to give us 4. Well, 2 times 2 gives us 4. And also 4 times 1 gives us 4. There aren't any more factor pairs for 4. 2 times 2 and 4 times 1. And we mean whole numbers here. So we need to pick one of these pairs, either this one or this one, that fit the criteria of the B. Now remember, we said that once we write on the factor pairs, we choose the one that gives the B term. Now, the B term here is 5. So we want to pick from the pairs of factors the one that can give us 5 by adding them or sometimes subtracting them. Now, in this case, 2 plus 2 gives us 4, but we need a 5. So 4 plus 1 can give us a 5. And that's what we need here. So if we rewrite this 5x using 4x and x, or 4x and 1x, then we can get two numbers to break the 5 into 2 pieces. So we're going to choose 4 and 1 because 4 times 1 gives us 4 and 4 plus 1 gives us this middle term here. That's very important. So let's write that out. 2x squared plus 5x plus 2, we're going to break this 5x into 2 terms. That is, we're going to write it as x and 4x. Doesn't matter which one you write first. So I'm going to write now 2x squared plus 4x plus x, or 1x, plus 2. And once you do that, then you group them 2 by 2 and you factor it out. So the common factor, or the greatest common divisor of these two terms in this bracket, would be 2x. 2 is the highest number there and here, and we have x for our other factor, and now we divide it out. So 2x squared divided by 2x leaves us with an x, and 4x divided by 2x, that would give us 2. Remember, we are dividing it out. 4x divided by 2x. So x divides it out itself, and 2 into 4 goes 2. That's literally what we're doing here. So here, there are no common factors. This is just x and 2. They're very different terms. And if you run into a situation like this when there are two different terms, then all you'd simply do is to choose 1, because 1 divides everything. So 1 into x gives x, and 1 into 2 goes 2, and we simply write that back. And all we need to do now is to combine our outside factors in one bracket. So we have 2x plus 1, and write back the other bracket, which would be x plus 2. Remember that these two brackets must be the same. And that is our answer. So this one is quite interesting. Kept it simple so we could go through the process. Everything was positive. We're going to mix it up a little bit and make it a little more interesting. Let's try this other one. First, let me just make this a little bigger here. So we have factorized the expression 6y squared plus 13y minus 8. And so remember now, our a is 6 and our c is minus 8. And so we're going to multiply 6 times 8. I'm just going to ignore the minus for a moment. 6 times 8 gives us 48. All right, let me put the minus there. So it's negative 48. Now, what other pairs of numbers multiply to give you 48? There are a few, so let's write them down. We can say 48 times 1. We can say 24 times 2. We can say break 24 into some other numbers. This could be 6 times 4. And so we can have other factor pairs such as 6 times 8, or we can have 4 times 12, or we can have 16 times 3. So there are many factor pairs that we could choose to give us 48. Now remember that it's a negative 48. So what it means then is that one of our numbers has to be negative. Remember, when you multiply a positive number by a negative number, that gives you a negative result. So if both numbers are positive, our answer is positive. If both numbers are negative, our answer is positive. But since we have a negative 48, it means that one of our numbers will have to take on a minus sign. Now, look at these pairs of numbers here. We have 6 times 8, we have 48 times 1, 24 times 2, 4 times 12, 16 times 3. Now, which of these could give us 13? Now, when you look at them, you realize that the only one that can give you 13 is this. And the only way you can get 13 is if you say 16 minus 3. So this becomes the factor pair that we need. With practice, it gets a little easy. Initially, I can tell you that when you just start doing this, it may be a little hard sometimes to find the correct factor pair that you need, especially if the numbers are a little big. But the idea is to write out the factor pairs, and then you look at the situation and say, okay, I need a negative 48 so that one of my numbers has to be negative, which means that 16 take away 3 gives us 13, which is that. And so we're going to take this expression now, 6y squared plus 13y minus 8, and we are going to rewrite the 13y in terms of this. So we have 6y squared plus 16y minus 3y minus 8. And so this is now split into these two. And once we do that, we group them and we factor. Now let's look at this term. What is the highest common factor we can use here? The highest common factor we can use is 2. 2 for 6 and 16, and y. So we can do that. And then 2y into 6y squared. 2 into 6 goes 3, and y into y squared goes y. Plus 2 into 16 goes 8, and y divides out itself. So we're left with this result. Now for this bracket, whenever we are factorizing, the factor takes the sign of the first thing here. So we're going to have a minus. Now these two are very different terms. So we're going to use 1 as our common factor and just divide out everything. So a negative 3y divided by negative 1 gives us a positive 3y. And a negative 8 divided by negative 1 gives us a positive 8. And notice that our brackets are the same. So we can simply combine our outside factors and write down 2y minus 1 times 3y plus 8. And sometimes if you're not sure of your answer, you can always multiply this out and add up your results to see if you get that expression when you're finished. And that could be a way to check your answer to know if you're correct. All right, let's look at another one. Here, again, let me just make this a little bigger. So we are going to factorize completely 2x squared minus x minus 15. Now again, let's label them. This is our A, this is our B, this is our C. So here our A is 2, our B is negative 1. Remember that the coefficient here is negative 1. And our C here is negative 15. So we're going to start by saying A times C. And A times C would be 2 times negative 15, which gives us a negative 30. Now let's write out now what are the other factor pairs of 30. Now this one is a little easier. So 30 is the same thing as as written above, 2 times 15, also 6 times 5, also 10 times 3. So these could give us 30. Also, we could write 30 times 1. Now, sometimes you need to write out all of them if you're not sure, but sometimes the answer becomes obvious that only this one could probably work. 6 times 5 could give us the middle term of a -1 if we choose to say that 5 take away 6. Now, 6 take away 5 would give us a +1. But notice that we have a -1 for our b. And so because of that, we're going to write it as 5 minus 6. Again, we have negatives in our question, so you have to be careful about that. One of your numbers turns out to be negative, one of the numbers in your factor pair. So let's write this out. 2x squared minus x minus 15. Remember, this is the same thing as minus 1x. Now we need to use this pair of factors to rewrite this one. So notice then, 5 times -6 gives us -30, which is that. And 5 plus -6 gives us a -1, which is our b. So this is our AC and this is our b. Now let's get to factoring it out. So here we're going to split it and say 2x squared plus 5x minus 6x minus 15. And here, in our first bracket, the only thing that's common, we're going to put those two together. The only thing that's common here is x. So we write down our x and we factor it out. X into 2x squared gives us a 2x, and the x into 5x gives us 5. That's great. Now remember that we need to use a negative factor here because this first term here is negative. Now what number can divide 6 and 15? That is the highest number. The highest number there would be 3. And so we can divide 6x by 3. It's negative 6x by negative 3. 3 into 6 goes 2. That gives us 2x. And 15, that's negative 15 divided by negative 3, gives us 5. Again, notice that your brackets are the same. That's important. And it's a nice way to check your answer. So we are finished. And all we need to do now is to put our outside factors in one bracket, x minus 3 and 2x plus 5. And we're done with that. Let's look at another one. Here we have another expression, 5p squared minus 9pq minus 2q squared. Now you might notice that earlier we had just a single letter, x, throughout the question. But now we have two letters, p and q. It doesn't matter. Same procedure. And so what we do here, remember, is that this is our a, this is our b, and this is our c. So our a is 5, our b is -9, and our c is -2. So we're going to write down a times c, which would mean 5 times -2, and that gives us -10. Now, what are the other numbers that multiply to give us 10? There's just one more pair, which is 10 times 1. So 10 is either 5 times 2 or 10 times 1. Now, notice that our b is -9, and that tells us that we need to have one of our numbers in this pair. 5 plus 2 plus -2 would give us 3, so it couldn't give us 9. The only one that can give us 9, the only pair would be this. And we have to write it in order to get -9. We'd have to say 1 minus 10. And that would give us a -9. So we're going to take these two factors and write them in terms of this b term here. So we're going to have 5p squared. Now we're going to, instead of our 9pq, we're going to have 1pq plus 1 plus pq. Or you don't need to write the 1, but I'm just writing it so that you see it. And then minus 10pq and minus 2q squared. So the idea is the very, very same. Doesn't matter how many letters are there. It's either 1 or 2, but the principle is the same. You go through it just like that. Now notice here we have a p for our common factor. Let's put these in groups. Group, and those two in group. So here we're going to use the p as our common factor. And when we factor out p from here, we end up with a 5p. And when we factor out p from here, we end up with just a q. We close that bracket. And look at this one now. Notice that we can divide by a 2. It will be a negative 2 because this term is negative. And look at them, we have PQ and then we have Q again. So Q is a common factor. And then we're going to divide negative 10PQ by 2Q. It sounds like a lot, so let's write it negative 10PQ. We're dividing it by negative 2Q. Now the Q's cancel out. Notice that first. The negatives cancel out as well, and 2 into 10 here gives us 5. So we're left with a 5P. And the other term is negative 2Q squared, and we're dividing it by negative 2Q, which means negative 2Q times Q divided by negative 2Q. First thing, the negatives cancel out, the 2's cancel out or divide out as well, and the Q's also divide out. And that simply leaves us with a positive Q. And so we are almost done. We just need to put our answers in the brackets. So we put the P and the minus 2Q in one bracket. And then we write back the other bracket, which is 5P plus Q. And that is our answer. Let's move on. And so, we've come to the end of it. So here, this is our last question. Didn't even realize it. So remember, with these kind of questions, in order to get a serious grasp on it, you need a lot of practice. So find some practice questions, practice with it until you develop the skill necessary and you get a lot of confidence in knowing how to factorize a trinomial. Don't stop until you feel that you can explain it to somebody, and actually try that. Once you get it, try and explain it to somebody to see if you can get them to understand it. That would be definitely a certain way to know that you know. All right. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, then please do so. And thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned as you went through. Until next time, we'll see you.